they're making a live action TV show of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Hey, I got my eye on you.
Water Tribe.
I'm really keen to hear people's thoughts on this. A lot of people saying it looks way better than the M Night Shyamalan movie, which if you don't know, well, let's take it back to the start. Avatar: The Last Airbender, of course, classic kids Nickelodeon show of like my generation. Absolutely loved it. Where like it's about Avatar Aang, who is an airbender who can master the 4 elements and save the world from the Fire Nation. I know it sounds sick. I was actually really late to watching Avatar. I remember it being on as a kid, but I never and I would watch episodes, but I never watched the full thing. Because the thing is, it was one of those rare kid shows that had like a story narrative, like arcs, narrative, character development, where it wasn't just like, here's episode 1, now episode 2, and it's just like nothing is linked or anything like that, right? Avatar: The Last Airbender was so deep, and I think that's why it resonated with so many people. I think I only watched it in full when I was 18, but I actually think it is genuinely like one of the best TV shows ever. Like not even kid shows. It is a really good show. And M Night Shyamalan, classic director, who has actually directed a bunch of really good movies. I really like, I talked last year about Unbreakable and the Unbreakable trilogy, Unbreakable, Split, and Glass, which I think are really good. Sixth Sense is a classic M. Night movie. He's also had a bunch of stinkers, which are really bad. He had one called The Happening, which was probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And then his recent one, Old, was also really bad, but he had another one called Knock at the Cabin, I think, Knock at the Cabin, which Rupert Grint was actually in, and that was better. That was better. But he did a live action Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know what year that would have been. It might have been like 2012, 2013, could be wrong. And it is like commonly regarded as one of the worst movies ever made. I would agree with that. I would genuinely agree with it being one of the worst movies ever made, because it is. It just was so bad, and it like missed so much of like the actual what made the actual show great. Also, the thing that annoyed me most about it, which might be petty, is like the main character Aang, who is always called Aang in the show. For whatever reason in the movie, everyone calls him Aang.
My name is Aang.
Which I don't understand the creative decision making behind that. Like, why would you do that? I think, they were really disappointed with that result, and now Netflix is making a series rather than a movie in like, I guess a trend of rebooting a lot of old kids stuff into TV series now. Of course, the Harry Potter one's coming. They've just done a Percy Jackson series, all this kind of stuff. They're turning into series. They did His Dark Materials, the Golden Compass. They've done a bunch of them. And, they tend to work pretty well, generally. The trailer for Avatar: The Last Airbender came out, and do I think looks good? Like, I think it looks better than the M. Night Shyamalan thing, but here's my general issue with turning animated kid stuff into live action, right? And I don't even quite know the exact words for this phenomenon, but I think there's like, when you're watching an animated kids kind of thing, say it's Avatar: The Last Airbender, you can get around it. Even if it's like a bit goofy, you kind of have this thing in your mind of like, well, this is just like a kid's show. Like, I can look past the goofiness and the absurdity of it because it's a cartoon and its general audience is kids. So, cool. And of course, like, they ended up doing a sequel called The Legend of Korra, which was a little bit more teen to adult oriented. But anyway, what happens when you take that absurd cartoony content and turn it into live action? I just think something always just gets lost, especially if you're trying to kind of one-to-one remake the vibe of it. And hear me out on this, and I think what M. Night Shyamalan tried to do was not emulate the cartoony animated vibe and make it really gritty and serious. But what happened was you lost a lot of the charm of the actual original show. Then I look at something like Dragon Ball Evolution. Very similar case study, right? Dragon Ball Evolution was the live action movie of Dragon Ball Z. And it is also considered one of the worst movies ever made. And I gotta say, that one is probably the worst movie I've ever seen. Everything about it absolutely sucks. And with that, I think they tried to keep in a bit of the charm of it. A bit of like the I don't even know, like the absurdity of the dialogue in the anime, which was already translated from Japanese to English, right? Then they really Americanized it and it just didn't work. It just did not work and it was terrible. And I think once it goes to live action, it's very hard for the viewer to suspend their disbelief. And suddenly you are seeing the absurdity of what you're watching and you're going, oh, this is actually dumb. And I don't mean that Avatar: The Last Airbender or Dragon Ball Z are dumb, but I think when you turn them from cartoons into live, that's when you see that that's when you see that they're actually kind of dumb, but you're willing to accept that in an animated sequence, right? When it's live and everyone's doing all this shit that they're doing in the cartoon, but they're doing it in live action with special effects, to me, it just never translates super well. If anyone has any other examples of this, I'd be really keen to talk more about it, but I'm skeptical of this Avatar show. I want it to work and I'm definitely going to watch it, but even from watching the trailer, I just wasn't sure. The other thing that I think might be a factor is that, like, particularly with Avatar, a lot of the characters in the cartoon are kids, like they're young kids. But generally speaking, and while I say this, I am aware that Aang, the character, was voiced by a kid about that age, right? But I'm pretty sure most of the other kid actors were voiced by adults who are like performers, right? They're actors and performers. Whereas then when you go to cast a live action version and you cast actual kids, it's just a little bit more cringy, to me at least. But I'm keen to see how this goes. Let me know what you think and if you'll be watching it.